Tell me what you want. What you really
I
want.
kind of want them to start just busting out with some Spice Girls. Welcome to another episode of Real Talk, my all-new series in which I answer your social media questions and interview interesting guests in the world of business. And one of those guests is here to my left. He goes by the name of Kubby on Snapchat. He's also my homeboy, Chris Kubbernus from Denmark.
Nice.
And we're going to chat about why Snapchat is not relevant.
Oh, that's a big one.
Welcome to Real Talk.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Great to have you here.
Thanks. Yeah.
So we're filming on location in London. Snap Happen just happened today. Snap Happen is the world's first ever awards and meetup and conference dedicated to the Snapchat community. Chris, you've got a great presence on Snapchat. You've blown up, man. That's how we met.
Yeah,
I see you
it's gone
everywhere
crazy.
all over Snapchat.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this first, because I'm really intrigued by your clickbaitish title
Right.
of your presentation today. But before we get to why Snapchat is not relevant,
Right.
tell the audience out there a little bit about yourself and how Snapchat has made a difference on you professionally speaking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. So I'm a digital marketer. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own agency. It's very small. We're just starting, like as of January. Basically, the agency does social media, digital marketing, websites, paid ads, all that kind of typical stuff. And Snapchat, how it's had an impact on me. I mean, really, when I first got into Snapchat, I totally disregarded it. I think it was like when Facebook failed to buy it, the news just went massive about Snapchat. And so I was like, okay, I'll check this thing out. And it wasn't really for me at that point. And then about a year and a half ago, a friend of mine said, you really should check out Snapchat again. It's amazing. And the community of people there is so great. So I started to get back into it. And really quickly, I started noticing like the engagement levels on Snapchat were through the roof,
Right.
compared to any other social media channel that I was doing at the time. So I thought there's something really cool and interesting going on here. So I went like full on, like as much as I could. I put my Snap code everywhere. I was leveraging all my other channels. Right. I was even like, trying to get into directories. Like you have the Snapchat directory. I went into that. I was pressing hard. I was running paid ads, just really like trying to build my following.
Growth hacking.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
Focus on the content, focus on good stuff every day, focus on marketing tips, trying to engage with that community, up till 2 a.m., re-snapping people, like replying, like really putting in the time and the effort that it takes to actually build a social media following. So, and that's how it's really blown up for me. And then making good connections with those influencers, those people that, can put on events, that can mention your name to other Snapchatters, that can mention your name to other brands, things like that. So it's really it's months and months and months of hard work that pays off.
So what you just described, Kubby, is building a personal brand takes work.
Absolutely.
My last episode of Real Talk was actually centered around personal branding. A lot of people will reach out and they'll constantly ask, how do you leverage Snapchat? How do you use Twitter or Facebook to build your personal brand? And there's no substitute for hard work. And I think you can absolutely attest to, you just spent a year and a half just to make it out here to London to get asked to speak at an event like Snap Happen. And one of the words that stood out was influencers. This is a phrase that's so often overused and such a broad term because I feel there are these micro influencers within our own networks, and these are the people that really inspire and motivate us. You wrote a Facebook post recently. You tagged a lot of the homies, I like to call them the Snap homies, on your post, giving us shout outs. And I say us because you tagged me in that post too. Those are the people that I think are the true influencers, because while they're not the Sean Duras spoke at this event. While they're not the Sean Duras, influencer on that level, they're influencing how we in the business world change our own brand, and how we evolve, so then we can use these mediums like what we're doing right here on video to give more value to the masses. And that's why I always say that regardless if you have 5 followers or 5 million, you're influential. You're at least influential to someone, some way.
Yeah. I mean, somehow. I've seen the best engagement or the best followers haven't come from like when an influencer like yourself has like shouted me out or helped me out anyway. Like I've seen it at the small micro level, like when somebody who is, maybe doesn't have a ton of followers, but it carries a little bit more weight, when somebody who isn't big social media star, actually, has like people that they connect with on a personal level, says, hey, this guy is really good, you should check him out. I've seen much, a little bit more deeper relationships come out of that, because they are like, they reach out to you and you say, they say, hello, like, hey, how's it going? My name's this, and what are you doing? And so you build a relationship with those people. I find like if you get something from a big one, like a big influencer sort of doing stuff, they might bring you a ton more followers, but it might not necessarily be
It's not the same
deep, right?
quality. Like it's
You can have
not. It's
more,
not that same community or that same pocket. Like I know exactly where you're going with this. So we have a lot of the same people that follow us on Snapchat because I
Yeah.
see when you post on Facebook, they
Right.
comment on your post, they comment on mine. So it's a lot of the same folks out there. And I feel that again, to your point, like that smaller pocket, that smaller community, they're influencing and they're getting the word out for the same type of people. Whereas a
Absolutely.
mega influencer out there, for example, a mega influencer out there that might have a very young audience, very young demographic watching their snaps, might not necessarily be
perfect
that audience, the perfect
mix.
audience that wants to opt into the content I post, which is very business and marketing related.
Yeah, you have to go niche, right? And I think like everybody's got their own niches, and everyone's got sort of like, for example, like within our space, marketing, there's only really like maybe 100 people that you go, okay, those are like the social media influencers, or those are the influencers, and it's a pretty tight knit, and everybody sort of follows them, right? So you can quickly build these sort of like micro communities, and I think that's really interesting. And I think getting a shout out from DJ Khaled is probably not going to help you, right?
Right.
Because it's going to be everybody that's going to like watch your content and be like, this ain't going to help me. Like this is not for me. Like, so they're just going to be turned off by your thing anyway.
But
right?
when you have 10 people within your community share your Facebook post,
yeah,
10 quality people that
Makes a
then
difference,
those 10
right?
people's Facebook audience sees their content or they give you a
Yeah.
shout out on Snapchat, it's a completely different game. And
I agree.
we're going to get back to talking a little bit more about this social media community that you're in. You just said there's about 100 people that are, top of the game or,
Right.
or leading the game. I think that's something that we need to change as leaders. And what we need to do is we need to take our social influence and empower
Others to do the
others
same.
out there to do the same.
That's a really good thought, man.
I want to get back to that, and I want to segue into your talk today at Snap Happen, which was around why Snapchat is not relevant. It's a very interesting topic.
Right.
You got a presence on Snapchat.
Right.
You're at a Snapchat event.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your presentation.
All right, so it was titled, I don't know if I'll give the same talk ever again, but it was why Snapchat isn't relevant, or why Snapchat doesn't matter, I think actually was the title. And basically the premise of it was that a lot of people run around talking about how to do Snapchat, or how Snapchat has changed marketing, or how to use Snapchat as a marketing channel. And I really think the discussion needs to go much, much bigger, because there's a systemic problem in marketing and in business today where they don't move fast enough. They don't get into these platforms fast enough, and they don't look at the world as it is. They don't look at it and say, like, there's so many companies that are still running print ads and still like doing television and still doing all these things, and they're not really saying like, is anybody actually watching? Is anybody actually doing this anymore? Like, and that's the fundamental thing.
What if we started looking at social media platforms like we look at the stock market? In terms of
Yeah,
how,
that's a good way of looking at it.
Gary Vee, who we're going to talk about in this episode, talks about day trading time for attention,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what if marketers start looking at the value of a social network based solely on, is it going up or down in terms of active user engagement?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. Actually, I often use this.
That's a good way to look at it, by the way. I'm going to start using that in my talks.
Yeah, it's a
just
good one.
sidebar comment there.
Yeah, you can take it. I'll take it as well. We'll both say it. And they'll be like, who said that originally? Nobody said it originally. So the one thing that I talk about a little bit with people is that there's this discussion about ROI, return on investment, in the marketing community. And can you attribute the activity that you're doing here to sales? And we had a big discussion about this last night with a few people at a restaurant, and did a Facebook Live about it, which was, I think, epic. I think people.
It was pretty epic. Shout out to Avery Ratz,
Yeah.
Ratz Pack Media, straight from Israel.
Yeah, he did a really great job.
Shout out if you're watching, Avery.
Yeah, he's watching. Of course he is. And then, if we break it down, return on investment. If you talk to any CEO, CFO in the industry, they understand return on investment. And if you think about it in terms of stocks, Do you want to buy a stock when everybody else is like getting in, when it's at the top, when it's like, you know, it's had its peak? Or do you want to get in on a stock at the beginning? Do you want Facebook stock at $50 or do you want Facebook stock at $300? Well, everybody knows that you buy low and sell high.
Exactly.
And that's how I look at social media.
Yes.
You have to buy low. And by buying low, it's by getting into Snapchat. It's about getting into what's actually going on in this world at an earlier stage so that you don't have to spend as much. So that you're not getting into the noisy world at the end where it's like super expensive to actually do and ROI gets really difficult. Instead of getting, you know, 10 times the return on investment, which you'd get if you started it, you're only getting, you know, 10%, right? So that's...
So pretty much to sum it up, Snapchat doesn't matter or Snapchat is not relevant is basically you're saying, let's not focus on the name of the platform. Let's focus on the activity of the people.
Exactly.
Because it could be Snapchat today, a year ago it was Pinterest, next year it could be something completely different.
Absolutely.
Let's put our marketing efforts and our resources into the platforms or into the channels in which our customers are engaging, which is something that's lost. And you know, I talked about this today in my talk, in which in the year 2016, it's surprising that most brands today still do not understand Facebook or Twitter. And now we're trying to layer something on top of that.
trying to go to Snapchat.
Which is Snapchat.
When they haven't figured out
which
the
is not
basics.
as intuitive as of these other platforms. It actually requires that you pick up a phone. And one of the examples I like to give is DJ Khaled.
Yeah.
You know, DJ Khaled is an example of what I think every brand should be. As crazy as that sounds, because there's something that he's done really right that a lot of brands still cannot grasp, which is how to create community. And again, community is not limited to Snapchat.
Right.
This isn't just a Snapchat conversation.
Right.
This is holistically your social media marketing presence. Is it focused around community? Are you nurturing relationships? You know, the key word is social in social media. That's something that's often lost, man.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny, like I do a little bit of consulting for companies, and a lot of companies talk about relationship, right? Building relationship with people, building partnerships. And I find it's interesting that the talk doesn't map to the behavior, because if you're thinking about how do you actually build relationships with people, it's actually kind of like old school in a way. You have to actually engage with people. You have to create that community. You have to go face to face with them. And so I go, why are you dismissing the Snapchat then? Because that's one of the only platforms. Instagram stories, you can do it now, but that's one of the only platforms that you can actually like pick up your phone, put your face and say, hi Jim, how's it going? Hope your kids are well, hope your wife is doing well, really looking forward to that meeting next week.
Right.
That's how you develop personal relationships.
That's exactly how
right?
you do it.
So I'm like, I always get a little confused when companies say we want to develop personal relationships. Well, how are you doing that? How are you leveraging technology to actually do that?
It's old school rules apply with new school tools. That's the mantra. Yeah, that's the mantra. So two things, viewers. One thing, look at social media as like the stock market. You know, is the stock going up or down based on user engagement activity? And then second is what I just said, which I just
you can't even repeat it.
I can't even repeat it.
It was so brilliant, like you can't even repeat it. I can't either though. We have to go back to the tape and see how good it was.
So let's talk about the culture of technology. One of the things that you said in your talk today is you're referring to the iPhone or the mobile phone as the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Which is a really aggressive statement, but I get it and I love it because this technology that we live by has completely disrupted consumer behavior and how we just go about our days. Like, for example, we're here in London right now where I depend on Wi-Fi just to communicate with the outside world, and I feel completely lost.
Yeah,
like,
if you don't
like
have
a child if I don't have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's scary as shit, right?
It's completely scary. We can say absolutely.
Okay, yeah, it's scary. I mean, people like I think most people are like I think the number one fear used to be public speaking. It was like they did a study that said public speaking is number one fear, and then death. So most people would rather be, giving the eulogy, or most people would be rather in the coffin than actually giving the eulogy, which is a funny kind of way of looking at it. But I think probably not having Wi-Fi, not having internet, is the biggest fear on the planet at this point. So, I mean, that is the sort of atomic bomb because this is how we access the internet. Most people, and our kids, I think our kids won't even pick up a laptop. I don't even think they'll do anything.
My kids right now don't watch TV.
Yeah, my kids don't watch TV.
I don't think my grandkids will ever know what a TV is, quite frankly.
That's crazy to think about that. Like this thing, this thing has really just changed everything. It is. That's why I say it's the atomic bomb. It's like nobody's gonna live their life the same anymore.
So you're attributing this to the technology culture. So what can a brand take away from that? Like, how should they pivot what they're doing today? You mentioned print before. You and I have had this conversation now the last couple of days. People aren't reading the newspaper. They're not reading magazines, but yet print ads, for example, still exist. TV commercials, radio spots, that all still exist.
Yeah.
And the majority of those dollars, marketing dollars at big corporations and agencies, are not going into social or digital. They're still going into traditional media.
Yeah, that's scary.
Very scary.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's they haven't seen what's going on, and that is that technology has become our culture. I mean, you won't meet almost a single person on this planet that doesn't use Facebook, doesn't know what Facebook is, and you can see things like poke that become part of our poke's not around anymore, but become a part of our words,
right?
How we use words, how we communicate, how we talk, and that becomes a part of our culture. And now you see this thing becoming a part of our culture.
It becomes part of the DNA of our society.
It really does, and that's amazing to think like this thing has actually done that. I said in the talk, like, Snapchat is like Christmas. Like when Snapchat becomes so ubiquitous,
right,
that it becomes a part of everything that we do and how we know. And then when you say, "Hey, snap me," everybody knows what you're talking about. That's a game changer.
Right.
Brands need to wake up and be like, we need to be a part of that. It's like if brands were just to say, we don't want to be a part of culture, that you're going to get nowhere with that. Like, you need to come with the times. You need to come with the culture, or else you're going to die.
So for our last segment, we're going to talk about Gary Vee and graduating from the Gary Vee School of Business, as I like to call it. You have followed Gary Vee for quite some time. I have followed Gary Vee for some time, and a lot of what we do. So, for example, me doing this right now, someone might say this could be a ripoff of the Daily or Ask Gary Vee, or you having someone follow you around with a camera, having Sammy behind this camera following you around could be a rip off of the Daily Vee.
Yeah.
So, for anyone out there that says, "Oh, this person is trying to be like that person or that person," I often like to say that imitation is the nicest form of flattery.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're gonna see a lot of people do things that are the same as you. I mean, if you're an influencer, if you are pushing the envelope, which Gary Vee is, of course, and that's what he should want. I mean, his ultimate goal should be that everybody follows suit. Takes the tactics that he's sort of like the learnings, the teachings, and applies them. And I think that's really interesting. Like, from an execution standpoint, ideas are shit. Execution is everything. He says that all the time. And when somebody's executing, they might be taking a little bit of inspiration from what he's doing, but they ultimately are executing. And that is the secret. That is the gold. And so, I mean, I don't really think of it as stealing or, I don't know what else you could call it, but I think it's taking inspiration from what somebody else has done. You could do the same in painting or in music. You often hear like bands come out and someone's like, "Oh,
there's like the remix, there's the mixtape."
Yeah, or people say like, "Oh, they sound just like Creed," or whatever. Like, it'd be nice if a Creed
Designer sounds like Future for those hip hop fans out there.
Yeah, exactly, right. Or like that person's taking a lot of cues from Kanye, or that person's taking a lot of cues from Tupac, or whatever it is. Like, that just says that person has influenced the art form, and that's a good thing. That creates better art, because then somebody takes that and says, I'm going to remix, I'm going to do some cool stuff, and creates new art.
Well, it was interesting because watching the MTV VMAs recently, Kanye West went on stage. I don't know if you saw this in Denmark.
I didn't see it.
So Kanye West went on stage, and he's talking about how he looks at himself as being a leader in his industry, which in this case is the rap game. And he mentioned Zuckerberg and Gates and other leaders that he has learned from. And I think that's the thing, that's the word that we often don't use enough in our business, is learn. We're all students of the game. Absolutely. And I look at Gary Vee as being at the top of the game. He's the professor, especially when you've watched him for almost 10 years like I have. I don't know how long you've been watching Gary.
About 2 years
So
now.
2 years, almost 10. And every single time I've had a chance to see Gary face to face, I just say thank you.
Yeah.
And I can't thank him enough, because I have learned from seeing things like Ask Daily or Ask Gary V. I always confuse them. Ask Gary V and the Daily V. I'm able to see things like content production.
Right.
And how creating content like this helps tell your own story, but also add value to others out there. So those are aspects that I don't think is ripping anyone off. It's not imitation. It's just looking at what works for someone else, putting your own personal spin on it. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then pivot and go in another direction, essentially.
Yeah, and I think there's always room for more players in the game, right? There's always room for, like, nobody accuses Adidas from ripping off Nike, right? Like, they've got their own spin on it, but essentially they're making the same damn running shoe. Like, at the end of the day,
Just with a different logo on it.
There's a different logo.
That's real talk.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by this whole thing with Gary Vee or any other influencers. Like, there's tons of guys that I'm looking at. I'm looking at Casey Neistat's stuff. He's not even a marketer, but his style and his approach to filmmaking and to storytelling has so many benefits for other artists. And I think for an artist not to take that in would be a serious mistake, because they're missing out on something that's incredible and not sitting with something enough that they can actually build their own thing. So, actually taking a Casey Neistat thing and sort of remixing it in a way is how early people learn. So, for example, I don't know if did you play a musical instrument?
No, I did not.
Okay, so I play guitar. What do most people do when they first pick up the guitar?
They just play with the strings.
Yeah, or they start playing cover songs.
Right.
It's like they learn Layla and they learn
Right.
Blackbird eventually, right?
Right.
And then they start to say, I'm going to write my own songs. They start writing their own songs. They join a band. And that's how I look at this whole thing. It's like you have to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere.
And doing cover songs for a while is probably a good
Whether you
start.
have idols or they're just people that you look up to, you look at someone like Gary Vee, who creates great content that adds value. It's motivational, it's inspirational. At least I find it to be such. Very well spoken, very successful businessman. Who doesn't want to learn from that? Who doesn't want to emulate that if that's a path that you want to take? Same thing with music. If you want to learn how to be a great producer, learn from Jay-Z, learn from Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
If you want to be a great vlogger, learn from Casey Neistat. The importance, though, is that once you learn, then you apply it, you remix it to how it works for you, and once you see success, you've graduated.
Absolutely. I think you've nailed it. I think that's exactly the way you should look at it. And anybody out there listening, I mean, there's a lot of people that struggle with this particular thing. They struggle with how to get started. And I recommend that fully. Look at the top. Like, you don't need a strategy. I think it was The Rock who had this great quote of, like, you don't need, everyone talks about, like, what direction to go in. He's like, the top.
Right.
That's
There's only one direction to go.
The top. So go to the top guys in your field, see what they're doing, and move towards that as fast as you can, and execute, and eventually you'll be the top.
That's real talk, my man.
Yeah.
Chris
That's how I
Kubby,
bring it.
where can the fam out there learn more about you?
You can learn about me on Snapchat, so maybe you can throw my Snapchat code. It's Chris Kubby, ChrisKubby. Across all platforms, actually, like YouTube/Chris Kubby, Facebook/Chris Kubby, Twitter/Chris Kubby, Instagram/Chris Kubby. I got an awesome Instagram for those of you out there that love that. So come find me.
I love his quotes on Instagram, by the way.
Yeah, it's well, speaking of Gary Vee, it's very much inspired by him. But it's my own quotes. I'm not like quoting him. It's my own quotes, but it's definitely like from a graphic design standpoint.
Very similar in nature.
Has a little bit of that in it. So
Chris Kubby everywhere. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Real Talk. Be sure to subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube and give it a thumbs up and a share on Facebook. Until next time, peace.